Some people don't learn. They get caught up in highlight reels and knockouts, unbeaten records, no interest in doing any historical research. So even after the Dubois-Joyce fight is fresh in our minds, they'll say stuff like, I'd like to see Dubois come back and take on Derek Chisora. Didn't you see Derek Chisora just take Alexander Usyk 8-4 twice on 2 of the scorecards? Didn't you see this? Didn't you see Derek Chisora take Vitaly Klitschko the distance in a world title fight? Didn't you see that? Didn't you see Derek Chisora go to Finland and get robbed against Robert Helenius, who recently has made a little bit of a resurgence, knocking off the PBC's latest contender, Adam Kownacki? You're going to pitch him in there with Derek Chisora. Let him fight that Pfeiffer guy he was supposed to fight before Frank started messing with the guy's medicals. You know, Frank's got this guy for another 4 years or so, and he's got a big rebuilding job to do. Massive rebuilding job. Frank, I'm not saying he personally got Daniel out of the amateurs too early, but, you know, it is a little early for a heavyweight. Daniel should perhaps be turning pro now. Now, there was no Olympic cycle due to the pandemic. If there was, should Daniel have probably been competing in the Olympics, whether he got gold, silver, or bronze? Now, let's not get it twisted. The amateurs is no safe haven because you don't want to be professional. Amateur boxing is tough. It's very tough. But him fighting 3 rounds against the top competition in the Olympic trials and the Olympic finals would have probably been more of an ideal apprenticeship rather than him going pro, knocking over a whole load of nobodies that isn't teaching him anything. And then they're thrusting you into the ring with a fight with Joe Joyce at just turning 23. You get the best of both worlds, you know, being amateur, maybe a few World Series of boxing fights, and top amateurs always spar pros anyway. I knew he had no business in there with Joe Joyce. When people were saying, oh, forget AJ, Daniel's our new heavyweight, and stupid stuff like that, I was just like, really? What, is this off the highlight reels? You know, Daniel's there saying he's ready to fight Wilder, and it's out there. He's been saying that. He's ready to fight AJ and doing all this clout chasing. And the thing is, I used to back Frank Warren and the opponents that he used to give Daniel Dubois before he started calling big names. When you start mentioning big names, then the gloves are off. I remember Dennis Andrews, former 2-time light heavyweight champion of the world from Hackney, a grizzled veteran of the boxing game, saying, the young boys don't like fighting the old boys. They've got them hard old bones and a man strength. And that's what happened yesterday. The fact that people like me kept repeating, this guy has wins over the likes of top prospects in the game right now, like Hrgovic, gave Usyk a hard fight, arguably beat Yoka. He's took on Bryant Jennings and a former world champion in Berman Stavern. What's not registering to you? Joe took on Ian Lewison in his debut. Had, what was it, a 10-rounder in his first fight? And I'm happy for Joe. Not so much because he beat Daniel and I've got some vendetta against Daniel. No, I'm happy for Joe because I want people to start taking this guy serious and his career serious. Oh, he's a big robot. And look, I think there's always going to be a little bit of an eccentric perspective on how the guy boxes. But this is a serious contender and a serious man. And he's not to be played with by anybody. You see, Joe is a very articulate young man. He's into art. He's into martial arts. And a lot of people believe, because they see him in interviews and he seems to delay a long time in answering questions, they think, oh, Joe's one of them slow, punch-drunk heavyweights. Joe explained it. Joe said, the reason that I delay in answering questions when he's doing interviews in public is because he's seen so many fighters, and I'm guessing, you know, celebrities in general, just put their foot in it without thinking about what their answers are going to be and what the repercussions of what they say are going to be. And that's why he does that. The heavyweight division, I'm going to keep repeating it because it's worth repeating. It's a specialist division. Young, inexperienced heavyweights don't want to be going in the deep end like that, generally. You know, Mike Tyson is an anomaly. I remember Team Tyson, Jacobs, they were saying they could probably have beat Trevor Burbeck in Mike's first pro fight. They probably could have done, but you just can't let something like that happen. And, you know, he wouldn't have been granted a shot anyway. This ain't like Lomachenko at featherweight. he wouldn't have been granted the shot. But Mike had that ability from then. But Mike's an anomaly. To be able to beat a full-grown man like Trevor Berbick, who gave Larry Holmes a really tough fight. You know, Berbick beat the likes of Mitch Green, David Bay, lost tough fights to the likes of Ronaldo Snipes. He put the first L on Greg Page's record, and Greg Page went on to become a world champion. And of course, he's got the W over Muhammad Ali in Ali's last fight in the Bahamas. Berbick was a 32-year-old veteran of the sport. Full-grown heavyweight, muscled up, tough, good chin, hard puncher, not a great boxer, but a good fighter, decent boxer. Guys like Bone Crusher Smith, who Tyson faced. That was 6'3", 6'4", big muscular guy, tough, good chin, huge puncher. Tony Tucker, what is he, 6'4", 6'5", full of muscle, unbeaten in 30-plus fights, high KO percentage. And this 21-year-old kid is beating him up. People often say, Holmes was past it when he fought Tyson. Tyson was about 22 or something like that when he fought Holmes. They don't mention that, though. Derek Chisora is the wrong opponent right now for Daniel Dubois. The wrong opponent. Dubois lacks too many tools. His confidence ain't going to be right. It's the wrong fight. It's the wrong fight. Even if Dubois wins it, that could literally be his career done. Because if Derek can't beat you, he's more than capable of dragging you into a war. After Derek fought Klitschko had one more fight and got out of there.
Shit. Man's out here quitting in the mid-fight. Shit. Man's out here quitting mid-fight. Saying they want to fight me and they want to knock me out. One to me, no quit. Straight warrior. If I'm losing, I'm getting knocked out. Straight warrior. Straight warrior. And these cowards on the men, fucking Fisher and Daniel Dubois, cunts. That's all, I ain't got nothing to say. Man's out here quitting.
Your reputation in boxing really means nothing. Your reputation can take a tumble at any time. It's how you come back from your losses. Your reputation means nothing. Dubois said some slick-ish about Dillian when he got knocked out by Povetkin, said he was ready to knock him out. Frank wanted to pitch Dubois in with Dillian, said he wants to make cross-promotional fights with Eddie. Let's do it. They were chomping at the bit to get a shot at Usyk if AJ dropped the WBO belt. But after all that, this morning, Daniel's a quitter. A lot of people who were singing his praises are now saying he was never any good. That's what people do. I remember the David Price fan base. Very aggressive, very loud, very confident. And when he suffered them 2 losses to Tony Thompson, and Dave's career has never really recovered, has it? He's never had a world title shot, mostly getting beaten up at European and domestic level and winning here and there. He still made a career of it, don't get me wrong. He's earned some good purses, I assume, Dave. And he's been either on Box Nation, Queensbury, Matchroom, and Sky. So he's made a career of it, but this is where David Price or his fan base thought he would be. They thought he'd be right at the top, challenging the likes of Anthony Joshua, who David was boasting about knocking out in sparring. And Dubois was boasting about knocking out Anthony Joshua as well. But what's happened with their career? They tried to clout chase of Anthony Joshua's name, saying this and that. And where are they now? But the more I think about that, ain't it weird? Pricey and Triple D were bragging how they knocked out AJ in sparring, while Tyson Fury came out and said AJ beat him up in sparring. But look where them two are in comparison to Tyson Fury. It really puts sparring in perspective, doesn't it? I mean, sparring stories, there is relevance to them, and it's kind of like the triangle theories. You can't use the sparring stories as an absolute narrative to how things are going to transpire in the ring. They have relevance, but only a certain amount, and it has to all be put in perspective. We all know about them broken orbital bone injuries, and that's what he has, and nerve damage around his left eye. Now, they're not sure how severe the break is. I don't like the sound of the nerve damage, though, around his left eye. I don't like the sound of that one bit. We've heard about Kell Brook, his 2 orbital bone injuries around both eyes. Nonito Donaire suffered one against Rigondeaux. He's managed to make somewhat of a career of it since then. And that's not the only boxer Rigondeaux has given a broken eye socket. Kell Brook said he feared going blind after the Errol Spence fight. If you were in fear of you losing your eyesight, then I have no criticisms of you quitting. None at all. You have nothing to prove to me. Cautionary tale for Dubois. Got his orbital bone broken, the second one, in 2017 against Spence. And it was just a couple of weeks back he challenged Terence Crawford for the WBO belt. And what happened? He got hit in that same spot. And we saw what happened in the 4th round. I'm wondering where Daniel Dubois is right now. Because right now his career might be in the balance. But he himself might be saying, yeah, you're laughing now. I'm going to come back and show all of you. Or he might be looking for an exit out the game. He might well be wanting to take a long break and not even think about boxing for a minute. I mean, he's a young man who's probably got a lot of money in the bank right now. I remember reading recently that he's been doing 5 hours of push-ups since he was 5 years old or something like that. You know? I think there's a good chance that he's just become stale. His routine with his trainer, the opposition he's been fighting, he may have just became a little complacent and got a little stale. The loss could be the best thing. The orbital bone injury, never good. That's never good. That's a red flag already on his future. But the loss itself is the biggest lesson that you need to know what it actually takes to make it. You might have thought you knew before, but you certainly know. You might not even know, but you have way more of an idea than previously when you were knocking over Fujimoto and Daniel Latte. And the only reason I did a prediction video so confidently was watching the Fabio Wardley-Richard Latte fight. When I watched that, I just had an instinct, a really good, strong instinct that Joe is going to beat Daniel handily. Now, I'm not saying Fabio is world class. I'm not even saying he necessarily beats Daniel Dubois. I'm not saying none of that. What I'm saying is I watched him perform, and because Fabio only had them blue-collar fights, the few blue-collar fights, no real amateur experience, Fabio is having to probably watch a whole lot of tape, probably study a lot of great fighters on tape. Watch Dillian, listen to his coach, but a lot of stuff that he's doing on the fly, and he's working out a lot of stuff for himself. Daniel is more robotic. Daniel looks to me like a guy, you know, go jab, Daniel, jab, and he'll jab. But I don't think Daniel improvises very well. I think the comparisons with Frank Bruno are unfair on Frank Bruno. I really do. Horribly unfair. It's like I saw Richard Latte throw a right hand with Fabio nearby the ropes. And Fabio done this shoulder roll thing, if you want to call it that, and made the punch miss. And he done it so smoothly and was still in punching range. So while I'm saying I don't know who wins out of Fabio and Daniel Dubois, because I don't know enough about Fabio yet. I really don't. I'm saying he's a more composed boxer than Daniel. He's a better thinker on the art form than Daniel. Now, Daniel may be able to bulldoze Fabio out of it. He may well be able to. But Fabio is the better thinker. And I realize, you know, like, for some reason, I've never ever been able to get out of my mind how Daniel panicked when he got in a little exchange of punches with Richard Latte. That's always stayed with me with Daniel. And I was basically counting down the days before this issue resurfaced again. And everything with Daniel right now has gone full circle. When I first used to watch Daniel outside the ring, he had no confidence and didn't want to talk. And yesterday, just because it seemed like an obligation that he had to talk to Steve Bunce post-fight with his eye all knotted up. And then you see his team pull him away. He needed to get to the hospital. And Steve Bunce said, sorry, Frank. And Frank said, look, you interview when you win, you interview when you lose. I know he had just lost, but I was seeing that same kid, introverted, shy. I saw that same kid come back. We all know Frank has had problems with Queensberry. It's all out there on Company's house. And Daniel has been forced to promote himself more than he probably would actually like to. Look, Daniel, you've got to sell yourself like the Americans, you know? You've got to be like Adrian Broner. And although Daniel hasn't gone to that level, like a PBC fighter or anything like that, it's a role I don't think Daniel has ever been comfortable in.
I've got a question for Daniel. If you get ill before the fight, you're going to pull out, what's going to happen?
No, my dear, you know what? I'm going to do you a favour. Because you can't see your son after he's been knocked out, you'll spare the heartache. You'll be spared the heartache. Yeah.
Oh, aren't you nice?
Now, Joe Joyce's mother has some issues with her sight. I don't know if she's partially blind or I'm not sure. And for Daniel to say what he said there, like, look, it wasn't brutal bad. It's still out of character for Daniel. And these are some of the burdens that not just boxers, but people in the public eye have to endure with their various professions, whether they're politicians, boxers, actors. It's like Joseph Parker. He's achieved way more than Daniel, but he has a certain mentality that is not as aggressive in your face like a lot of boxers. So when he attempted to unsettle AJ before they fought, and they made that video about AJ's chin and certain things, they said it was just unnatural. It was a bit cringe. And the promotional side of boxing just ain't made for everybody. And I think Joseph Parker and Daniel Dubois are two major examples of that. And I think this loss is going to do severe damage to his confidence. Daniel needs to go away from boxing for a little while and find out who he is as a person. Maybe even away from his old man for a little while. I know his dad's done a lot for him. He maybe needs to just find who he is as a man on his own terms, not his dad's or Frank Warren's. Whether that includes boxing or not. He might have them big muscles, but he's still a baby. I mean that in a good way. It's good to have your innocence when you're young. But there does come a time when you've got to be a bit more clued up on it and step up. So there's got to be a happy balance. Because anyone can say what they want. If Daniel chooses not to train or fight no more, then Martin Bowers and the rest of the team and Frank Warren can't get paid off him. It's as simple as that. So there's got to be a happy balance there. You've got to listen to your coach, but you've got to believe that your coach is somebody compatible with your goals and desires. He's got to listen to you equally. Daniel has to start taking control of his training camp. Like when I saw Daniel unable to block or slip the jab, I was surprised. I knew he was going to be crude in there, but I was so shocked that Daniel couldn't slip Joe Joyce's jabs. Joe must have landed at least, I don't know what percentage, but such a high percentage of jabs. You know, you could only run into issues with your eye taking so much jabs high up in the head. He took a horrible amount of jabs. And, you know, some people are saying, Joyce's jabs are not that powerful. He's a 17 stone plus man with an 80-inch reach. He's landing that consistently. And I don't want to start blaming Martin Bowers. You need to blame the coach. Everyone always does that. Because I look at Denzel Bentley winning the British title from Mark Heffron in the rematch, and Denzel moves around the ring beautifully. Doesn't keep his head square on the target. Beautiful jab, beautiful straight right. So, to me, it's too early to start throwing daggers at Martin Bowers or anybody. It's too early. Frank Warren obviously invested in the 5-year extension a whole lot of money in Dubois. I remember watching an interview when Danny Flexen asked about, is it easy to get sparring partners? He said Frank's gave them a wad of money to deal with sparring partners, so they were flying people in. So Daniel's had the A-side treatment as a prospect. You think he's cheap flying in them sparring partners? Quality ones? Joyce hasn't had that relationship with Frank Warren, so he'll probably just spar where he can get it. Like if AJ calls him up, he goes spar with him. Martin Bacoli is one of his sparring partners, but maybe that's all about to change now. Frank invested heavily in Dubois, not just financially, but Frank really believed he had the next prospect / contender / champion, and he still may well be, but it's a long way back. Billy Joe Saunders said he knows Frank, he considers Frank to be a friend, and he said Frank will be a little bit disappointed how Dubois went out quitting. Now Joyce signed a co-promotional deal with Queensberry and Frank Warren. It's definitely ain't a 5-year contract. The co-promotional pact was with Richard Schaefer and Ringstar. I don't know how much they have to do with the situation now. I haven't heard nothing from them because obviously Richard Schaefer and David Hay were working together when Joyce was signed with Haymaker and Richard Schaefer. So I don't know how much fights he's got left on there. And I don't know if he continues working with Frank. I don't know if he feels a way that Frank prioritized Dubois before him. But Dubois was there before Joyce, so, you know. George Foreman won the World Heavyweight title in 1973. The fight was held in Kingston, Jamaica. And He knocked out Joe Frazier in 2. The promoter of this fight, Don King, rode into the arena with the champion, Joe Frazier, in Joe Frazier's limousine. After Frazier was knocked out, Don King jumped into the ring, hugged Foreman, and left Jamaica with the new champion, George Foreman. He went on to promote the now legendary Rumble in the Jungle, where Foreman lost his title to Muhammad Ali, and promoted most of Foreman's fights until he retired in 1977. When Foreman came back in the 80s, he was working with Bob Arum. Frank Warren is probably still in shock, and he's got to let the dust settle before he makes his next move. I mean, he's still got to recoup the money that he's laid out for the extension deal with Daniel Dubois, and all his expenses that he's taken up and purses that Queensbury and BT have had to pay him. He still hasn't recouped. So he's in a little bit of a difficult situation there. Does he turn his back on Project Dubois, or does he go all out full throttle with Joe Joyce? Maybe Joe Joyce's team are saying, if we go any further, Frank, we've got to sit down and restructure the deal. Joe Joyce was undervalued in this fight. Way too much. By not just the bookmakers, by boxing fans in general. Some people say, well, Daniel just had to stay on his feet and he could have got a decision. I don't see it like that. I see it like this. If it went to the scorecards, they're going to rob Joyce. They were definitely going to rob Joyce. And I had Joyce way ahead just with the jab alone. Daniel done well with some power shots, but they were sporadic moments. You know, there were little bursts in the round, and then his gas tank would be near on E for the rest of the round. Peter Fury had Joyce way ahead on the jab alone. It's not like, look, I'm not going to go at Usyk, I'm just pointing it out. It's not like the Usyk jab where he was moving backwards, throwing it against Derek. Joyce was stepping in with his. He was stepping in with it, and he was using it while he was moving as well. Anyone saying that Dubois had a case of winning that fight if it went the distance, I mean, the 10th round was a 10-8 round for Joe if it had concluded. Dubois clearly lost the 9th, where Joe did the Roberto Duran move and kind of waved him back to the corner with his left hand after he put a beating on him. There was no way Dubois was winning. And look, saying that all he had to do was last 2 rounds is crazy. 2 rounds is 6 minutes. This is pro boxing. 6 minutes is an eternity in pro boxing. 6 minutes with that eye? A broken orbital bone? This was Joe's moment, man. He didn't just break the orbital bone in the 10th. He had it broke a long time ago. Daniel did well to tough it out until when he did and bailed out. So the scorecards to me were irrelevant. Like, I already broke down how I'm going to pick fights from now. I'm not bragging because I got my pick right. I expect to get picks wrong in the future. No, I said stoppage. I said stoppage. If I had said points, then I'd be going into a territory where I know Joe is likely to get robbed. That's why I said stoppage. Joe timed his fight perfectly. 10th round stoppage. And he still had 2 rounds, 6 minutes, to put more pain on Daniel Dubois. And he got it done inside the distance, like I knew he needed to. And he timed it to perfection. I heard John Rawlings say, this is the biggest moment in both of their careers. I think you're forgetting that Joe Joyce walked into the ring in an Olympic final. So yeah, it wasn't just another day in the office for Joe, but it was more so a bigger moment for Daniel than Joe. Daniel's definitely a big puncher, and let's not get it twisted. Joe done a great job rolling away from that right hand all night, and any shots that he did have to take, he took them like a true heavyweight was supposed to. But the truth is, there's lots of heavyweights who can punch. Loads. This was always going to come down to skill. I said, Dubois has got to be able to outbox Joe if he's going to stand any chance. Can't bulldoze guys like this. You can't do it, man. Got more skills than that. I hope Dubois comes back. I want to see him rebuild his career. I was never mad at Dubois, and I've got to divert where my energy should go. You know, it was just frustrating for me to hear, oh, this is going to be the next biggest and greatest heavyweight from out of the UK ever. And I'm thinking, what? This is based on nothing. You're saying this. And I'm going to stop taking that to heart. I have to understand that there's a lot of voices out there. And what I'm realizing I'm taking on what they're saying like they actually know anything about boxing. So I never really had no beef with Danny Dubois. He was pretty game for while it lasted. I know he quit at the end, but he was still game throughout the fight. And he had his moments, but he couldn't sustain his attacks. It looked like he was blowing pretty hard from the third round. So that's got to be addressed as well. But I was entertained by the fight. I'm going to be rooting for his comeback because he's going to need people supporting him now. Those who was hailing him as the best thing to ever bless the heavyweight division bail out on him. He's going to need support. And I'll be one of them, especially if he does what he's supposed to, gets his due when he accomplishes something good and not before time. Can Joe Joyce become a top contender and champion? He deserves a shot. I don't want to hear he needs to wait and develop his skills and fight more contenders because he's not ready in your opinion. Now, I'm not interested in all that. Any big fights he can get, he should take them. Daniel was ranked number 2. Frank was looking to push him in there with Usyk if AJ vacated that WBO belt and went for the big showdown with Fury. Well, Joyce has just beat Daniel, so that should elevate Joe into Daniel's number 2 spot. And he should go for it against Usyk. Yeah, no waiting. He's 32. I think he's got time to waste. He's got money to make. I'm not trying to hear that Joseph Parker should get the shot before Joe Joyce. I'm not really hearing that, not feeling it. Parker hasn't done nothing for a long time. Even when he had the WBO belt, he didn't do much with it. It's my opinion.